Hi, everybody. My name is Riley Taggett. I am a research intern with the Vision Center, and I am currently joined with Jason. Oh no, I already forgot how you said I pronounce it.
Lavalle, Lavalle,
Lavalle. Okay.
Lavalle.
Jason Lavalle. A little bit about the Vision Center is Vision Center aims to inspire passionate students in the field of aging services to meet leadership needs of the country with higher quality education programs and partnerships for rewarding, impactful careers. So, Jason, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got your start in senior living?
Sure. Hi everyone, and thanks for having me on, Riley. The way I got myself into senior living is my first job, actually, and just sort of being immersed in it because of my family. My father, he's a nursing home administrator. My grandmother was a director of nursing at a skilled nursing facility. And my very first job was washing dishes at 14 years old in a nursing home. So I was immersed at a very young age, going in and out of nursing homes as a little kid, whether it was visiting my dad, visiting my grandmother. I always knew that I wanted to do something in healthcare. And when the time came, when I was in undergrad to do an internship, I said, why not do it at a nursing home? And I loved it, loved building the connections with residents, patients, and families, and it just stuck.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a little bit similar to my background. My dad actually was a janitor at 15 in a nursing home, and then I started in food service at an assisted living when I was 17. So it's definitely interesting to see. I feel like when you start your career young in like dietary services, that
Yeah.
kind of you always end up somewhat at least in the senior living field, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something to say about the population that we work with. They love young people. Uh,
Hmm.
they love to grab your ear. They love to talk to you. And even if you take that, 5 or 10 minutes just to chat with them, it goes such a long way because a lot of our patients and residents that we have, some of them don't have family members, and those interactions that you offer to them every day can make their day, make their week, their month, and even their year.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that philosophy. Just like the aspect of, you're right, some of them don't have family members that even live in the area, so they don't get to see them as often. So people who work there do kind of become their family, whether it's their administrator or even housekeeping staff or anything like that. So just walking the halls and a quick "how are you" could really make someone stay.
Absolutely. And just building off that, being an administrator or an executive director, whatever you call it, in whatever community that you're in, it's really been a neat thing having your own community. You have the same patients, residents, and families if you've been in a building for many years that you build relationships with. And it's such a great thing to have that small community where you get to know what's happening in their lives or their extended family's lives. And that's one thing that I really loved when stepping into this role. Before I was actually an administrator, I was an admissions director at a skilled nursing facility. And that was great because you worked a lot with people. And that was the biggest thing that I loved, especially when I was working as a dishwasher, just again, the communications with people. So that's one thing that I love and continue to build on every day.
Yeah. So your current title is nursing home administrator?
Yeah, administrator or executive director. I guess it depends on the organization that you work for. I've been with a couple of different organizations where they title it executive director, and then my current organization that I'm with, it's labeled as administrator. But I think they're really one and the same. I do have my license, nursing home administrator's license. I've had it in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts since 2019, but really didn't start using it until 2020, really when the pandemic hit. So it was kind of an interesting time for me to step into this role. It almost kind of felt like crisis management in
Hmm.
a way, as opposed to what I experienced during my AIT, where it was just like, hey, this is what it is. Once COVID hit, it was everything that I knew sort of went out the door. I kind of had to learn in real time, just like everyone else, and keep up with the ever-changing guidance, whether it was from CMS, CDC, the Department of Public Health, or your local health department, really. There really wasn't a cookie cutter method for a lot of things, and it was a crazy time for us all.
Yeah, no, that's interesting that you kind of started in literally peak of pandemic, which
Yeah.
would probably deter a lot of people, because I know, even the people who have been in senior living for, years or decades, that was a really, really difficult time. So I can't even imagine, what was that like going into your future career in the middle of a worldwide pandemic?
It was scary. I next, at one moment I was an admissions director and I was accepting admissions, and then the next moment we stopped admissions, like taking them, and we were moving people who had tested positive into one half of the building, and the other half of the building was people who weren't positive. And I was at that building for the better part of a year, and a really good friend of mine and colleague was the administrator. He was only a couple of years older than me, so I learned a lot from him, and we're still very close to this day. And I got a call from the president and CEO of the company to say, "Hey, we need to ship you up to another building that's an hour away to use your administrator's license there just for a month." And so I said, "Oh, okay. I'm doing it. I'll be there." And it was an incredible experience. It was a 142 bed skilled nursing facility, and I was, I think, 24 at the time.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right, well, let's do this. Learn trial by fire, I guess. And a lot of what I learned from my good friend and colleague at my last build, I took with me, and it was a great experience. I was there for a month, and that actually landed me an opportunity for a full-time gig at another sister facility that was a lot closer to home, and I wasn't driving over an hour every day. So it was a very interesting experience. Still to this day, I think about those times, and I think a lot of us think about those times and how challenging it was, and how scary it was at the same time. There was a lot of questions from families, residents, and patients. People weren't able to visit their loved ones. We did a lot of, I think, creative things back then when we were like setting up individual pods for people to visit in, setting up things outside. People would even come to a resident's window and have
Mhm.
visits that way, whether it was like FaceTime or Zoom or Teams or whatever it was. We did a lot of really great things. But I'm very glad that all of those things are behind us now, and we're in a much, much better place.
I can't even imagine, honestly, because I'm 23 now and I'm scared enough to go start my AIT. Like, I cannot even imagine running a nursing home or like a skilled nursing facility right now. So I cannot even imagine jumping into that literally in the deep end in the middle of a pandemic. Like, that's really like good for you. Like, that's actually amazing, because I would literally be so scared. Like, I don't know how you did that.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time. Luckily, I had a lot of really great friends, family members, other colleagues. I'm very fortunate to have a great network of people that support me. I can ask questions. Again, even still to this day, I run into things that I don't know, and I say, "Hey, I know someone that knows this, or maybe they know this," and I can reach out to them. And I think that we all just have to work together. At the end of the day, we're here to take care of people, and it can't just be one person. It has to be a network of us all. I always tell people it takes a special type of person to do what we're doing. I think it even takes a even more special type of person to be able to provide direct care. Our CNAs and our nurses don't get enough credit for the work that they do. But I think that if you're interested in senior living, you have to have a a niche for it. You want to do it. You don't just wake up one morning and say, "Hey, I want to be a nursing home administrator." I don't think people really know enough about it, quite honestly, which is why I think it's great what the Vision Center's doing, and what a lot of us are doing to try to promote senior living, because you can make a great career out of it. But I think the feeling of taking care of people is the icing on the cake. It tops it all, because you're giving back to a community who needs our help.
No, I completely agree, especially when you talk about the type of person that it takes to work in senior living, because I think that adaptability is definitely one of those things that it almost like it can be learned, but you kind of have to have that personality where you are, kind of go with the flow, but you have to be uptight at the same time, because you do have people's lives in your hands. And I think that, that's something that I've learned. I've always wanted to do senior living, but one of the things that I've learned is like, because I'm very much like a very organized, kind of structured sort of person. But I mean, even in my internships, my boss will be like, okay, yeah, you're doing due diligence and I need you on this meeting for me. And it's like,
Yeah.
this is my first week here. Like, what do you mean? I don't even know where this place is that you want me to go. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to be able to jump in and take the opportunities. And the one thing I've learned, like, especially being so young, is like, you don't want people to think, oh, like they're just dumb and young. But at this point in my career, I like to think of it as there are no dumb questions. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to ask someone because the risk of getting it wrong, it outweighs looking stupid. So I always just think at this point, this is the time to ask questions, even if they are dumb.
Yeah, ask all the questions in the world. We don't, it's impossible to know everything. I'll reference the state operation manual or ask a question, to the Department of Public Health. I want to ask those questions because I want to be able to speak intelligently to it rather than sort of guess and hope that I'm right. One fact that I'll never forget in our setting and when taking the nursing home administrator licensing exam, that we are the second highest regulated industry in the US, the first being nuclear power plants. Like when you think of that, it's mind blowing.
That's crazy. I didn't even know that. I mean, I knew it was super regulated, but compared to that being number one, that's actually nuts.
Yeah, it's insane, and I always kept that with me, and it stands true. I mean, there's something new that comes up. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Well, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we have how many regs in our state operation manual to abide by, but rightly so. I mean, I go back to we're taking care of people's lives, and we work with a vulnerable population. So we want to take good care of them. We want to do all the right things, and at the end of the day a lot of folks that are with us, it's their home. Not many people realize that. Some people just think, oh, they're a rehab. They come here and they go home. And while that may be true for a lot of our population, the other half of our population, this is their home. They're here because they need our help, and we're here to provide that care. And we want to do it the right way because they have rights while they're here, just like you have rights when you're at your own home. You can do what you want. We want patients and residents to feel that same way, and we want to sustain that environment and make them feel welcomed and at home.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the communities are a lot like a neighborhood, but in the sense that residents actually basically they run the show. Like
Yeah,
in a normal neighborhood, the HOA basically can tell you
yeah,
take down that flag or that,
yeah,
basketball hoop. But in a senior living community, a resident can basically do whatever they want and administration will let it go like to a point. So like that's always been one thing that I find interesting is people always are, under the impression of, oh, they're forced to be there, or look at this, they don't get to do what they want, when in reality, they have more autonomy than they would have living in a neighborhood.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we want to make sure that they have that autonomy. I can remember we had one resident here, and he was here for short-term rehab and ended up on hospice, but he loved wood carving. And he had this like Dremel tool, and he so badly wanted to do wood carving. And this was back during my AIT when I was at the building, and I can remember the activities director and the team and the administrator at the time. They made sure that happened. They brought in like his tools, like a big wood block, and he was carving a wooden bird, I think, or something like that. But I thought that was like the coolest thing because it's something that he clearly loved, and probably in most settings, definitely not in a hospital for sure, they wouldn't allow that, or they just wouldn't take the time and effort to make that happen. And I think that goes such a long way to be able to make everyday or once everyday things happen for people that probably wouldn't necessarily happen again.
Absolutely. And, that's the other thing. I think that a lot of people don't realize that these senior living communities really are, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I wish I lived in one. Like, they have pools, they have water aerobics, they have like
Yeah,
bar classes, they have
yeah,
world-class gyms. Like,
yeah,
it would be my dream to move in there at 23. So that's why I'm like, I literally have started saving for my retirement. So one day I can afford to live in one of these places. So, like, the idea that it's just, and I mean, there are bad there are bad companies, there are bad nursing homes, but that could be the same thing said for any other
Yeah,
industry in the world. So I think that, it just comes from a reputation of there being some bad ones. And, when it comes to your family members, your emotions really do take over. And that can, I've always said, and I think I got this from my parents, you're not mad about what you think you're mad about. So half the time when family members are getting, worked up or upset, it's because their loved one is suffering and everyone just wants to do the best they can. So
sure.
that's kind of another interesting part of senior living is you have to have that emotional intelligence to realize that. And even sometimes that takes, being screamed at or something like that by a resident or a family member because, people get upset. Sometimes you lose your temper. I mean, that happens to everyone. So it really is, it's just an interesting industry. You really get kind of every single part all rolled into one, which is what I've always really liked about it.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And you mentioned something about, our industry and good companies and bad companies and all of those things. And I think that the senior living industry sometimes gets a bad rap in a way. And I think this is a good opportunity to sort of highlight all of the great things that we do. Yeah, you see some horror stories in the news and it's unfortunate. But look at all the great things that we are doing. I think all of the nurses and new grads and people studying healthcare in college or thinking about going into healthcare, they don't know how hard we work and what we do for a population that needs our help. Everyone thinks that the hospital is this, big and flashy and sexy, and I want to work there because it's the hospital. But no one knows about, hey, long-term care. Our nurses and CNAs are just as awesome and, excuse my language, kick ass as the
Mhm.
nurses that work in the hospital. We take care of all of those complex patients that have IVs and complex medications and are quadriplegic and all of these things. We can do all of those things just as good as the hospital, if not sometimes better. I think you look at long-term care or senior living 20, 30, 40 years ago, the population that we had back then was more of an assisted living population. And now the acuity that we're seeing in our setting is that of like a mini hospital, if you will. So I think that people that are interested in healthcare and are hearing about senior living, I ask them to give it a shot because we need more people interested in our industry. We need more help, and we need collectively as an industry need to do a better job at marketing and saying, "Hey, we're here. Look at what you can do. You can be the mini CEO of your building or your community or your setting, and look at all the great things that you can do." And look at all the people that you can help out and build relationships with. Um, I think
No,
that's always just something to throw
absolutely.
out there.
You bring up a good point, especially when it comes to, the acute side. That's the side where, a lot of people want to be. I mean, I've
Yeah.
had professors tell me I should go down that side. I come from a family where, my dad's side has been senior living. My mom has worked in the acute setting for like her whole career. And so I tried an internship in cardiac rehab. Nope, not for me. Like I've always
Mm.
just known. I've always just had like walking the dining room, talking to residents, like
Yeah.
my first community at 3 months old. It's just always I've had just such a special connection with
Yeah.
that. But even I think that if people would just give senior living a chance, especially when it comes to kind of that opportunity to move up the ladder, acute care is extremely difficult to do so. And also the turnover rates are crazy. Like what
Mm.
somebody has always told me, in the time of an economic downfall, they're not going to fire the executive director.
Right.
Like, so it's like there's so much opportunity. And especially when you compare it to like a hospital, I mean, it's kind of amazing that these short-term rehabs, at least the couple of places that I've interned at, their length of stay is like 10 to 13 days for recovery time, which is like unheard of for somebody to be able to come in, extremely having these issues, but able to do in that therapy, whether it's physical or speech therapy, and
Mhm.
able to go home in 10 days. And, they might need an aide a couple times a week, but I mean, that's almost unheard of. So I think people need to open their eyes a little bit.
Yeah. Absolutely. And a lot of colleagues that I've had conversations with or people that I've met in senior living, they find out of long-term care because they know someone or they have their mom or dad, aunt and uncle, cousin, whatever that's in senior living. Or there's that small group of people that just like, oh, I figured it out because, I was I was working in dietary, or I was a CNA, or I was a nurse, or whatever it may be. But there is so much opportunity to grow in our setting. I think that young professionals that are in college and want to do an AIT doesn't, once you do an AIT, doesn't mean you have to be an executive director and administrator right out the bat. You can start off in the business office. You can start off in admissions, HR, or finance or something like that, and then work your way to becoming administrator. And the same goes for CNAs and nurses. The pathway for CNAs to become an LPN and then an RN and then maybe a supervisor, a unit manager, and then all the way up to director of nursing. I mean, look at that pathway. There's so many opportunities in our industry to be able to grow. And I think that should be enticing for young professionals to say, geez, there are so many things that I can do. Um, and I think we're getting there. I know we are, but we need to push forward on that because we need more help in our industry. We need more help in healthcare overall. I mean, the pandemic really hurt us a lot in terms of nurses and CNAs. People got out of the industry. The opportunity to work from home became far greater for folks and what you can do, but our population that we serve needs our help. So we got to figure something out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think one of the most unique aspects of kind of, at least in my college, it's called healthcare administration. Being able to go into the hospital side is one thing, doing residency and everything. But in senior living, I mean, I always say that I think that, you at least need to have that passion for serving the aging population. But
Sure.
in reality, you could work in senior living in any capacity you wanted to, whether it be marketing, accounting, you
Yeah.
could be the CEO, you could be on PR. I mean, there's really just so many opportunities. And I think that so many people just get hindered by, oh, I don't really want to be hands-on. Like I remember growing up, everyone would, ooh, so you want to like be a nurse? It's like, first of all, what's wrong with being a nurse? And
Right.
secondly, that's not what I said. Like,
Yeah.
so I think that there's just a lot of miscommunication and major misunderstanding, which
Yeah.
in all honesty, healthcare has always been confusing. So I don't think that that's, necessarily surprising, but it is surprising kind of the reaction you get from, oh, I'm going to be working in a hospital to, oh, I'm going to be working in senior living. It's
Right.
interesting to see kind of what your feedback is when you compare to the two, when the education you get for both is pretty much the exact same.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think what we learn in undergrad, unless you're doing a specific degree that's in senior living or long-term care or what have you, you really don't learn the bulk of how to manage a nursing home until you're really doing your AIT. And I think that's what the great opportunity is for young professionals wanting to get into senior living. How much you learn in your AIT, whether it's a 6 month AIT or a year program, it's like you're doing school all over again, but it's hands-on and it's a different way of learning. And it's a great way to ask questions and it's in a professional setting. I think that if more careers offered that, even in undergrad, I think that we'd find more success in students wanting to get into management positions or interested in healthcare or whatever that may be.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time. This has been another episode of the InVision podcast with Riley Taggett. And Jason, I'm going to let you pronounce your name because once again, I forgot the pronunciation.
Jason Lavalle, thank you, Riley. I appreciate
Thank
the time
you.
and looking forward to seeing the podcast and seeing all the work that you guys are doing over at the Vision Center.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.